So John's gospel has lots of things to enjoy on Easter morning, including a garden tomb. It's no just tomb, it's a garden tomb. And I think John is totally setting us up. And John has been setting us up since the very beginning of the gospel. It may answer some of the weird things that are going on this morning. Because first of all, why is Mary Magdalene setting out alone toward the tomb? In every other gospel, Mary has company. Gospel of Matthew, there's 2 women. Gospel of Mark, there's 3. Gospel of Luke, there's 5, and there could be more. There's a whole squad with Mary Magdalene heading out toward the tomb. Other strange thing about the Gospel of John, all 4 Gospels witness that it was in the morning and that it was early morning, the sun was dawning. But Gospel of John says it was still dark. It was still dark. So John's story of Easter is the most alone, and it is the most dark. In addition, every gospel witnesses the fact that there's some kind of stone blocking the tomb, and the stone gets moved. In Matthew's gospel, an angel seems to move the stone away and sits on it, and is very sassy angel. In Mark's gospel, when the women go to the tomb, they say, "Who will roll the stone away from us for us?" They were worried about what they were going to do. In Luke's gospel, the women notice the stone has been removed, and they are perplexed. But only in John's gospel is there the response of panic. Mary sees the stone has been removed, and it triggers panic in her. She immediately leaves the tomb and runs back to get help. So she goes, she grabs her friends, her silly friends. There's a lot of running. In John's gospel on Easter morning, unlike any other gospel. There's lots of running. Mary runs, and then she rouses the 2 disciples up, and then they start running. And it's a little goofy because it says they were running together, so it sounds very serious. We're running together, we're supporting Mary Magdalene. And then it says the one disciple, so there's Peter, and then the other disciple is called the other disciple whom Jesus loved. That's the person's name. That disciple outruns Peter. It turns into a race. It's like a track meet for some reason. So it's just kind of goofy. So they're at the finish line, wave the flag. The other gospel wins. And the other disciple, it's been a long morning. The other disciple looks in and sees a linen cloth. He gets the first glimpse. He got there first. But I love it. Peter not only he arrives late, but he goes directly into the tomb. It's so delicious. In the Gospel of John, you get to go into the tomb. So Peter, just love how unique he is. He goes right into the tomb, and he sees the linen cloth, but he also notices the headcloth that had been around Jesus' head, and it's all nicely rolled up. So he gets to go in, and he sees even more. Well, maybe this emboldens that other disciple. The other disciple then goes into the tomb and joins Peter, and they look around. And then it says the other disciple sees and then believes. But it doesn't really say what that other disciple believes. The next verse says, "For as yet they did not understand the scripture that Jesus was to rise from the dead." So it's a little ambiguous. But the whole thing with the 2 disciples kind of ends with a bit of a meh. Because right after they investigate the tomb, they go back home. That's it. They don't circle around and talk to Mary Magdalene. They don't support her some more. They don't convey any information. So, once again, Mary Magdalene is alone, in the dark, outside the tomb. And this time, she is weeping. John's gospel seems to be the saddest gospel here on Easter morning. Weeping and weeping. But maybe that little bit of social support helped her out a little bit, because this time she does have the nerve to look into the tomb. And what she sees are not just linen cloths. This time she gets to see two fabulous angels, who today look strangely like disciples, but she didn't see that. She saw two fabulous angels, and they speak to her. Woman, why are you weeping? And then we get another window into Mary's headspace. She says, they have taken my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid them. These terrible they, have done a terrible thing to her, and she's left without control or agency. Another indignity after all the insult of the past few days. Then another voice, this time from outside the tomb, addresses Mary and says, again, the similar words. Mary, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for? And then the final window into Mary's crazy brain. She turns to that other voice, and thinking that that person there is a gardener as well as a criminal, accuses him of stealing Jesus' body. Where have you taken him? Tell me what you've done with him. To which this gardener says, Mary. And Mary responds, Rabboni. She's got it. She knows who's there outside the tomb. And she goes back and she tells those disciples, I have seen the Lord. I have seen the Lord. It's quite a journey for Mary on this Easter morning. How it all started out. So dark, so alone, so panicked. And in the other Gospels, soon on in the story, the angels appear and help the women out. Silence here. Even when she gets a little support, they abandon her. Twice she says, these other people are tormenting me. And finally, that crazy ending where the answer was right before her eyes, and instead of saying, oh, Jesus, you're here, she accuses this gardener of being a criminal. Why? Why is Mary in such a crazy headspace? Well, I think the gospel writer, John, has been setting us up. And he's unleashing his powers, especially on Easter morning. I had a theory back in November and December, putting together this year's John study. I thought, you know what? As I was deeply studying John, I thought, this Gospel of John sounds the most traumatized. In between the stories, here and there, are details that describe searing pain. And it starts way back in chapter 1. And this was a text right during Advent, right at the cusp of Christmas. It was talking about Jesus, the Word, arriving in the world. But the world did not understand him. The world was created by Jesus, but the world did not understand him. Jesus came into a tradition, a culture, a society that Jesus loved and knew well, and yet that human society did not accept him. Jesus was rejected, unknown, alone, and you see where it got him. People turned against him, whether it was the religious authorities, whether it was Rome, even his own disciples couldn't figure him out. And he was left alone in the dark, left to die. Not a great story. John sets us up, though, to say things happen in this old world. Terrible, terrible things. Like our liturgy says from John 16, in the world you will face persecution. In the world you will face thorns and pain and trauma and injustice and horrible, horrible things. John acknowledges that all across the gospel. And in naming it, he makes it okay. In naming it, he relieves our isolation in thinking, I'm all alone. I'm terrible. God must not love me. And John instead paints a picture of this is still the human life. Maybe the people in year 90, which was about the time John's gospel got written, John is the latest gospel, maybe the people then needed assurance. The people that were trying to follow Jesus were stressed out. They were traumatized and in pain. There's a story in chapter 9 that depicts a blind man who is, because of his association with Jesus, his family leaves him kind of out to dry. And the religious people, the society around him, leave him out there. The neighbors think he's weird. John depicts the social strife of even trying to do the right thing, the healing thing. And maybe year 90, they're like, throw in the towel already. You know, Jesus hasn't come back yet. The world hasn't ended yet. And to follow him is it just creates pain and torture to follow his way. It creates strife with family and everything else. And besides, life was hard anyway, and maybe they're experiencing some persecution on top of things for what they believed. John's gospel says, yes, this is true. Your pain, your struggle, what you're going through is absolutely real. You're not imagining things. Yes, it's true. And you will heal. You will get through this. And there's a way to get through this. Jesus is not just a way, he provides a way daily for getting through trauma. We may be tempted to give up hope, we may be tempted to retaliate, but time and again, John's gospel points to a more excellent way. Chapter 3, John points to God is love. God loved the whole world. Chapter 4, John reaches out to a woman who is a stranger at the well. Later, John points to the fact that Jesus is criticized, undermined. A plot begins to take him down. And yet, Jesus continues to model the way of love. He says, I am the good shepherd. And this good shepherd lays down his life. He doesn't strike back. He acts sacrificially through his powers. Then at the Passover table, Jesus says, this is my way. I am one who washes feet. I am a servant. This is the true good news of God, a foot washer. And then he gives the new commandment to love one another as he loves. This is Christ's excellent way. It's this excellent way of love. Right there, even at the end, chapter 18, we read it Monday, Thursday, Peter draws a sword, and Jesus says, nope, put the sword down. That's not the way through this. Well, what is the way? What is the way? It is such a hard way. You do that way, you might be misunderstood. Pain will not go away, but it's still the excellent way. Keep up hope. Keep up hope. So John puts us in the space of an individual this morning, Mary Magdalene, who exhibits lots of signs of trauma. Why is she up so darn early? She's up. It's so dark out. Why is she up alone? Why? Maybe she couldn't sleep. Maybe she was trying to figure out how to feel better. And the one thing she knew to do was just go to the tomb. Maybe try to get a little closer to Jesus. But then that proved the most dangerous place. He wasn't there, triggering her trauma, running, her craziness. But maybe being back with the guys gave her a little bit of social support and brought her back to take another look. Okay. And also maybe that helped her to weep. Just the mixture of emotions of what she'd been through. Grief, anger, just letting it out. And when she's questioned by the angels, she gets to say a little bit more. That holy question, why are you weeping? Why are you weeping? I think John is helping the people process their pain, their trauma, their disappointment, letting them think and know that somebody caring is listening. Why are you weeping? And give her a chance to express herself. And she moves from weeping to anger again. And she says this earlier to the disciples. You know why I'm so angry? It's because they're sticking it to me again. They have taken his body, and I have lost my agency in all of this. But then another voice says to Mary, woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for? Her trauma sees the answer to her prayers as a threat. Classic post-traumatic stress. Projecting onto something terrible. Just like that stone. Oh, that's even worse than I imagined. Oh, that person. Oh, they're here. They're out to get me. The voice of crazy trauma in all of our heads. John's depicting it and saying it's real. It's real. We experience it. It's part of life. But how do we heal? I love how Jesus then says to Mary, her name. And hearing her name in the voice of Jesus, Mary shifts. Her crazy brain clicks to another part of herself, her healing brain. And it hit me that before she's able to say, I have seen the Lord, to the disciples, she had the experience of the Lord seeing her. Mary, I see you. I know who you are. I love you. It flipped Mary's brain into the place of being healed and loved. I think it's so true for us in our journey. There are many things in our journey of healing that we can take from this. And we live in a society that is so full of trauma. I read a lot of articles about mental health, about the crisis we're in. Sometimes there's not enough caregivers. And, what do we do? What do we do? And it's like the gospel writer John knows the human heart, human life, how difficult it is. Yes, it sucks. At the same time, you can heal. You can heal, and there's ways to heal. Get social support. Get help. Work, cry, feel your feelings. And then I'd throw out there spirituality. Ask deeper questions. And be with whatever tools, whether it's people, church, reading, be in places that ask deep questions. Why are you weeping? And be with people who listen and help you articulate why. And you may need to say it a few more times. And this is part of our healing journey today. Why? When we have that experience of being seen and heard, it rolls away the stone in our brain and our hearts and helps us move forward. And when we experience that, we are in a position too to be listeners and seers of other people. We can be part of this very much needed group that God needs right now for healing. I was thinking about that crazy emery board again that we've used across the season. Lord, let your way of love sand away the rough places in life. And we've had this picture here. Across Lent, it had a big glop of purple over the top of it. And week by week, we use the emery board to sand away parts of this picture. Lord, let your love sand away whatever glop that's out there, that more love is revealed. There are no easy answers, but there is the way of love, and if we can model it this excellent way, it's a way. It's not an easy answer. It's a method. It's a process. It takes all of us working together. We're kind of like human emery boards, scraping away the crazy when we listen to each other, when we see each other. We are part of God's healing agency in the world. To God be the glory. Amen.